Assalamualaikum. I'm really thankful, alhamdulillah, that I got a lot of response on the video called Dear Born Muslim. A lot of people had shared their experiences of how it was being raised in a Muslim, like an Islamic background, and a lot of people were sharing their experiences and how they got to a better understanding of Islam. So I'm gonna kind of talk about some of that, but I just obviously want to start off by saying thank you. It was very insightful. So I'm going to kind of talk about some of the patterns that I saw and kind of just my own reflections. Alhamdulillah, I'm married, and alhamdulillah, my husband has quite an experience and reflections upon this issue as well, and a lot of people. So I feel like it's very helpful to understand all like people in different parts of the world as well, and people here in the West as well. So I just really feel like very blessed to have a great understanding. So basically, to summarize, number one, I wanted to talk about what it means or defining what a religious background is, an Islamic environment, kind of defining those words. We have to define them on what we view it, because I feel like it's a very subjective thing. Like, a religious background can mean so many different things to so many people. So obviously, when I think about an Islamic environment, it's going to be different from another person. Trying to view it in a more an objective manner, I feel like Islam, we could visibly see what actions of a Muslim are. So like praying, zakat, um, Hajj, and things like that. They're visible. There's a large portion of our faith that is character based, characteristic traits of the Prophet ﷺ and of other prophets. There's justice. There is um, kindness. There's a lot of patience. There's a lot of character traits mentioned and highlighted in the Quran and stuff like that. So we have like a large concept of what it means to be religious and stuff like that. But ultimately, it relates back to how Allah views His servant, and not necessarily but what outside people think about someone being religious or not. I think for me, when I see a religious person, quote unquote, I only really view it like, obviously I view their, if the pillars are in check, but I also look at a person and I see good character, and I relate that back to what Islam ultimately teaches, like, and tries to refine in a person. And I feel like that gem of good character necessarily, like whoever is delivering Islam to you might have not prioritized character in their practice of teaching. So basically, whether that's like you were spoiled, like kids were spoiled too much, so patience was never strengthened as a kid. Whether that's the there's so many there's so many things to cover, but there could be extremes that could alter your view, whether your parents were too lax or too harsh. Approach is really important when we're talking about a religious background, or being having religious parents, or all of that. It has to do with the approach. There is an Islamic approach to teach, in my opinion. People think there's so many ways to teach Islam. I believe that it comes with a psychology part. A psychology of a human is what Islam encompasses when we're teaching dawah. If we're, standing at speaker's corner, if we're standing, giving public dawah, there is a conduct of a person in which there's a way of life that we have, but there's a way to teach. There's a way to do everything in Islam, and it comes from an objective source. So I believe that there's really few ways that work when we're teaching. Discussion that my husband and I were having was of two extremes. So there's this like lax approach where lifestyle is very lax, everything is very lax, and then there's this approach where it's very, very harsh. So Islam kind of navigates these two things, and gives a middle ground, alhamdulillah, for how we should approach it. So that's number one. Number two is what speaks louder. So we think about the approach that our parents have done. I really want to know how the approach was of your parents, but an approach would be all talk and all at once. So this was pushed all into a child at a certain age, and it was a pushing of values, a pushed value system, and it was like, do these things equals being Muslim. So that's one approach. but I feel like what holds a lot of weight isn't necessarily that approach. What holds weight is, first of all, like, first of all, home environment. I am a big advocate, like a big believer in environment. Our child needs to see us have fun in the home, needs to see relaxation, but there needs to be work, a prayer time. So the time to play, pray. Obviously, prayer is important. Like I'm not doing it like I'm not doing it in order, but prayer, play, work, contribution to house like cleanliness, like they all need times and place within a house. Your home environment speaks louder than anything else. Like the home is safe haven, the home is relaxate. Like the home has certain pillar, like the way when you walk in, you know that you can make mistakes, learn, grow, be disciplined. You know, like this is a you know, the home environment and the parents' actions. A lot of like non-verbal things tell a child what Islam's about, and I have full conviction in Allah that my child knows my lifeline at the age of 3. She knows what I prioritize the most. She can tell what I prioritize the most. She knows what's the most top priorities. My too, I believe that some of the comments were saying that from a certain point they had to figure it out on by themselves, or they had this education and then it kind of fizzled out as they were in the school system and things like that. So at a certain age they had to question what they believed and kind of solidify, I guess, their knowledge and like, you know, feel firm within their foundation. So to talk about this, I think one of the faults of the older generation, and this is like not their fault, but this is one of the things that I feel like occurs, is that they put too much trust in the school system, because secretly they wanted you to learn Islam, but they secretly had like this, you know, this excitement for the education, and they obviously, you know, had this excitement of your future and you know, career and things like that. So that was definitely like, I think a lot of parents priority deep down, and they kind of thought that the school system was going to help through it, you know, it all. And I think they put too much trust in the school system, or they believe that the school system is all good, or they're going to learn morals there, or it's going to be a good thing for them and things like that. And they didn't understand that there was going to be an influence of the teachers, the friends, the feelings of getting good grades, and the highs and the ego and things like that. A lot of it is encompassed in school, and so I felt like they weren't standing with their child as they were going through school and being a companion with them throughout that time. And I think that there's this disconnect when it comes to the parents' connection with the child, and they didn't know how to rectify it when it got tough, when they went to high school and learned about this and that, right? So I think that now as parents we are um but yeah, I just think that education system, the shift is kind of where the parents, they just kind of passed it subconsciously to the child to kind of deal and navigate that. Not all the time, but that could be one of the cases. And yeah, and then also formal teaching, madrasa, things like that. There is all these like holes in any system that when you take a large group of students and teach them, there's going to be holes, and it's not going to always be smooth sailing. It's not about, like I said, I find that it's not all about talking the talk. It's all really like about action, and I believe that it requires you're curating a mind for your child to um, absorb knowledge in the correct way. So it's not necessarily about the knowledge itself, it's the way that the child's interpreting the knowledge. What I mean by that is, when if you're just speaking to them all the time about Islamic principles and do this, do that, this is this, then they will do all the talking as well. So when somebody asks them a question, they're just gonna reiterate what you taught them, and they're not gonna have that um, knowledge. Like they're not gonna act quickly, like think quickly. They're just gonna like regurgitate what you told them, but that's not always the accurate. So you want to create a mind in which can handle people telling, like if they're at school and then somebody tells them this is the right way, then you have to curate a resilient, strong, but also compassionate mind, like person, right? Like it's a well-rounded person, And if you're just giving them knowledge but not actually teaching them how to use that knowledge and to put actions towards what their mouths are saying, like it's a whole like element that was forgotten when our parents were teaching us. It's just like we regurgitate basic knowledge, like like I was mentioning earlier, but my husband was saying, like, you can't do both extremes because you're gonna kill curiosity and they're not gonna want to seek knowledge. Like that seeking part you're gonna kill. Like, oh, but my parent, like, if you keep yapping, then they're gonna not have that curiosity in them, and they're not gonna be able to like speak to you like, oh, this came up in school, like that. You're creating a shutdown mentality, so you have to create an open line of communication with them. So it's really about psychology. And Islam teaches already how there's this like one way to do things, and it's not like we can just teach how we think is like the best and how they're gonna, absorb it all, right? So that's my rant. I just wanted to say, this is just like the reflections that I had from some of the comments. I would love to know what you view an Islamic environment is. Make it clear that curiosity is not a bad thing. I think that's a myth that having curiosity is going to let your child go off the rail or things like that. The word curiosity, I think people think curiosity is like super bad and your kid's gonna dive into things that are bad and things like that. I just want to say that it's like that drive to learn knowledge is going to just die down, and not even the drive but also that line of communication. Like the source of their knowledge is they want to connect with it. If it's you, like they're not going to want to bond with you, connect with you and things like that. That's why I say a home environment needs to have a little bit of fun. Like you can play video games with your child and things like that. Like it's a full on holistic way of looking at it, that you have to keep the line of communication strong, and allow them to keep asking questions and things like that. So that's why I want to say that curiosity, meaning also like the dunya, like they want to learn the dunya, they want to know how to survive in it, they want to know how to strive in it. And so you as a parent need to know a lot about the dunya trends, things like that. So that's what I'm kind of meaning around the idea of curiosity. I'm not talking about diving into haram or like different ideologies. I'm talking about even that, like if they were to approach you, like you have to be able to outsmart them in a lot of ways. And so I just wanted to talk about that. So thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it. Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Jazakallah khair.